Well, thank you very much for that warm introduction. I appreciate that. I don't always get those warm introductions. I have told this story repeatedly, and if you've heard it already, I apologize. But as you know, we had re-elections this past November, and I was running for re-election in my district of Clinton, and was speaking to a woman's club there in Clinton. And this elderly lady was introducing me, went through all of the credentials that Scott just read, and she concluded her introduction by saying, we all need to get out and vote for Philip because the guy we got in there now is no good at all. So I said, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Kick all the bums out, you know, one of those types. I am a graduate of Baylor University. As you know, we won the Heisman Trophy this year. As you know, we won the Women's National Championship in basketball this year. So we're very proud of the things that we've accomplished at Baylor University this year. I am introducing a resolution in the House of Representatives to commend the Baylor women basketball team and RG3, and I trust all of my colleagues will sign on to that resolution. They've been strongly encouraged to sign on to those resolutions. I do want to thank you for allowing me to be here for a few minutes. Thank a number of people for allowing me to be here. I want to thank Tommy Delaney for his work, for all that he's done to make this organization move smoothly. I want to commend Jerry Host and congratulate him and hope that look forward to working with him and all he's got to do in the upcoming year. I want to thank Blake and Scott for all they do. This organization has been very valuable to me as a legislator ever since 2003 when I got elected. I've enjoyed working with them. They have great ideas. They bring forward a whole host of wealth of knowledge and experience that we found very valuable. I also want to thank Mr. Barksdale sitting right here. I have had the opportunity to work with him very briefly over the last 2 months, but in my time with him, I have found him to be an incredible man of vision, of knowledge, of passion. And you need to know what he's doing just because he's a true Mississippian. He's not doing this job for the money. He's not doing it for the fame that comes with it. He's volunteering his time because he believes in Mississippi. He believes in the work that he's doing. And he needs to be commended for what he's done. He's got no agenda but to promote Mississippi. He's got no agenda but to develop jobs and to make Mississippi a better place. He has volunteered his time and his money, and he is an example for all of us. He's been extremely valuable to me, and look forward to working with him until he concludes his work there. I also want to acknowledge my cousin who's here with me today, Mr. Bryce Winstead. He's 13 years old. He's in the back. He's paging for me this week, and I dragged him in here today to listen to this. I wanted him to see what a real legislator's life is like. I'm not sure he's impressed, but at least he's not in school, and he's glad about that. I also want to thank my fellow House members for giving me such a privilege of serving them in this capacity. It is humbling. It is overwhelming. When I first got elected, I couldn't sleep that night, not because of excitement, but because of the weight of the burden that I felt. I got up and started making notes about things that needed to be done, and my wife came in and said, what are you doing? Because I normally sleep very hard. I said, I feel the responsibility of this, and I want to make sure we do not fail. So we've worked very hard over the last couple of months, the short amount of time that we've been in, to try to make sure that we do the best we can. We have made some mistakes. Hopefully we've learned from those. Hopefully we will improve and continue to move forward and make the House of Representatives a place that we can all be proud of. As you may, well, you may not know, but this is the first time since the Republicans have had control of the House of Representatives since Reconstruction, about 136 years. So it is a historical development, but it's also a weighty responsibility because everybody wants to see what are they now going to do with it. You may also know that this is the first time since 1976 since we've had a new governor, a new lieutenant governor, and a new speaker all at the same time. A lot of people have great expectations about that. They think, oh, this is a new day. A lot of things are going to happen. I'm reminded of the story of the girl who died and went to heaven. And she got there, and St. Peter said, well, you know, you get to vote where you want to go now. You get to vote where you want to spend eternity. You get to spend 24 hours in hell, and you get to spend 24 hours in heaven, and then you get to decide. Where do you want to start? She said, well, I think I'll start in hell. So he put her on the elevator, and down she went. And she stepped off, and it was pretty nice. There were people around a pool, and had blues music playing. They were grilling steaks and drinking beer. A lot of her friends were there. And people were playing golf, and it was pretty exciting. And she enjoyed her 24 hours down there. So she got back on the elevator and went up to heaven and stepped off. And everything was pretty good, but it just didn't have the zing that hell had. There were people sitting on a cloud strumming a harp, and people walking by a quiet stream and meditating, but it just didn't have the party atmosphere that hell had. So after her 48 hours, she goes to Peter and she says, you know, heaven's nice, but I think hell's a place for me. I think I'd rather go down there. So he put on the elevator, and down she went. She stepped off, and it was utter darkness, a wasteland, the fire that is never quenched. Wailing and gnashing of teeth. And she was just baffled. And she says, I don't understand. I was here yesterday and everything was so nice. What happened? Satan eased up by her and he put his hand around her and he said, well, yesterday we were campaigning. Today you voted for us. So Phil Bryant and Tate Reeves and I were campaigning, but today you voted for us. So you're going to see what you get. We hope it will be good. We hope you'll be pleased with what we have done. Today is the 101st day of the legislative session. And thus far we have accomplished a lot. We have a great opportunity here in Mississippi because we do have the governor's office, the lieutenant governor's office, and the speaker's office to do some great things, things that we have not had a chance to do over the last 8 years since I've been in the office. I have had some conversation with some of my Democratic colleagues, and they have complained a little bit about the amount and the volume of legislation that's coming forward. And I have said, well, I understand that, and maybe we, in hindsight, should have pedaled it a little softer. But I said, you know, we've been pent up for 8 years with so many ideas. They're all just gushing forth at one time, and it may be a little overwhelming. So we're all trying to work together, the Democrats and the Republicans, to push agenda items forward. And we're learning as we go. I do want to comment on what I view to be the number one issue for all of us, and that's jobs. One thing I learned from Haley Barbour when he was in office is that he likes to poll. He polls everything. He wants to know what people are thinking. He wants to know what's happening in Mississippi. And one of the polls he conducted indicated that the number one issue for Mississippians is jobs. And so that's what we need to be about. We need to be, I agree with what Mr. Barksdale said. Government does not create jobs, but government creates an opportunity for jobs. It creates a friendly environment for jobs. And that's what we need to be about. A lot of that is tied up with education, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But we need to be about jobs. We need to be creating jobs. I also want to follow up on two items he touched on, and that's energy and the medical profession. I believe energy and an alternative source for energy is a big deal for our state, for the future of our state. I've created an energy committee. That was one of the first things I did. Come on up, Tate. It was one of the first. The Lieutenant Governor, ladies and gentlemen, give him a hand. One of the first things I did when I got elected Speaker was to create two committees. One was a Workforce Development Committee, and the other one was an Energy Committee. Because I feel strongly that that is a future of Mississippi. It's an area where we can create a lot of jobs. You may have seen in the news, T. Boone Pickens was here a couple of weeks ago. I had an opportunity to sit down and talk with him. He's big into natural gas. As you know, he made his money in the oil industry. But now he sees that the future is in natural gas. And Mississippi is one of the largest natural gas producing states in the nation. That's just an example of how we've been working on creating or looking at a new energy policy. That's something we're going to be looking at going forward. Governor Bryant has a vision for making Mississippi a health care destination. Back in December, I guess it was, I had the privilege of going with him to Houston, Texas, and touring their facilities where they have this enormous health facility in Houston, Texas. We had the opportunity to spend 2 days with those people and talk to them. He wants to bring some of those ideas here to Jackson, and we're working on some of those things. Those are two areas that I heard Mr. Barksdale mention that I think are very important, very critical, and we're working on that. I want to point out a couple of things we've done thus far in the legislative session. We've worked hard to push forward what we call the Attorney General Sunshine legislation. This has been an ongoing battle for years, as you know. I have tried personally as a legislator to push that agenda forward. We have situations where taxpayer dollars are being, in our judgment, misused. There's been a great abuse of taxpayer dollars there, and we've worked hard to pass legislation, not to prevent anything, but just to bring some sunshine to the process. So we want to know who's representing the state, how much are they being paid, and what did they do to earn that fee. We're not trying to stop the fees. We just want to know where the taxpayer dollars going. Hopefully that type of legislation will make the use of our taxpayer dollars much more efficient. It's something we passed in the second week of the session this year in the House. I know the Lieutenant Governor in the Senate has passed a similar piece of legislation. We're going to be going to conference on that in a couple of weeks. But that is an issue that we think is pro-business, business-friendly. It allows a more efficient use of taxpayer dollars, and that's something we're very proud of. We also worked hard to pass the inventory tax. I call it the inventory tax. That's a misstatement. We didn't implement an inventory tax. We passed a bill to eliminate the inventory tax. That's what we worked hard on in the House of Representatives. I have a friend who, as you may know, Mississippi, I think, is only one of 9 states that implements an inventory tax. I find it to be a very repressive tax. It's an anti-business tax. It causes businesses to withhold the advancing of their own industry. I have a friend, my boys play baseball at Hines Community College, and one of their teammates' father is in the building industry. He asked me about this the other day at the ball game, and he commented, he said, our company, we sell building supplies. He said, we stopped buying building supplies in October and November because we don't want to build up a lot of inventory at the end of the year that we have to pay a tax on. Now just think, if you take that business and multiply it by the hundreds of others in Mississippi, if they all take that approach, your economy is shutting down in November and October and December. They stop buying because of the inventory tax. If we could eliminate that, they would continue to buy, the dollars would continue to turn over, and the economy would push forward. So this is another bill that we've passed this year. We are going to try to get that pushed through. Another bill we've passed in the House is what we call the Small Business Regulatory Flexibility Act. This is an act that's been pushed by Governor Bryant. What we're trying to do is eliminate the regulations and the burdens that so many businesses are subjected to, and allow them more flexibility in the way they conduct their business. We don't want businesses bogged down by regulations and burdens and that sort of thing. So we're trying to make sure that they're not overregulated. This bill has passed both the House and the Senate, and we passed the Senate version yesterday, and it appears that it's on the way to the governor's desk soon. Last week, we also passed a bill that addresses workers' compensation. We've been led to believe that the workers' compensation laws work against the businesses very much. We've tried to level that playing field, make it a little more even. I like to joke, we've talked about voter ID, and we had a heated debate, but no fights. We've talked about abortion, we've had no fights. We've talked about immigration, and we've had no fights. We brought up the workers' compensation bill. We had 2 fights on the House floor about it. And we had to get the sergeant at arms involved and separate the people. So there was a lot of passion surrounding the workers' comp bill. It's interesting what gets people worked up. I've joked with Tate, he just had a baby, and he's staying up late nights with a baby. And I told him I've been doing the same thing, except I have 122 of them. He only has the one. If you followed the news, we were up there till midnight one night and 1 o'clock in the morning on the next night, and so that's why I've been staying up late. These are some of the things that we've done thus far that we're proud of in this legislative session. I would like to reflect a little bit upon other policy areas that I think have a great impact on our state. As I said, jobs is our #1 issue in the state of Mississippi, and creating jobs. But I think there's 3 things that tie into that's going to make us successful in Mississippi. Workforce development, which I've already mentioned, education, and a friendly legal environment. I'll take those in reverse order. As you know, in 2004, Haley Barber came and was a great advocate for tort reform. I was privileged to be able to work with him to implement what is deemed to be one of the best tort reform measures in the country. This helped eliminate the jackpot justice that we've seen take place in Mississippi. It created a friendly legal environment for businesses, and we have reaped the fruit of that over the last 8 years. We've seen a lot of companies come to Mississippi because no longer can they expect to be the subject of frivolous lawsuits and lawsuits that work against their business. So I was privileged to do that. I think we have created a friendly legal environment, which has created a pro-business environment for us. The second area that I mentioned was education. As was said in my introduction, I served on the Clinton School Board for 11 years before I got elected to the legislature. Many people commented as to how I got in the legislature having been on the school board, because if you're on the school board, you make everybody in the town mad. And they said, how did you get elected having been on the school board? I said, I don't know. My mother was a school teacher. Every female on both sides of my family were school teachers. My daddy worked for the Department of Education. So I believe in public education. I believe that is critical to the well-being of our state, the quality of life we enjoy, the importance, the value of your property, and the quality of life in your communities. I was privileged to work earlier this year with the MEC on their Blueprint Mississippi economic plan. I think there's some great ideas in there. We've got to, I think, take some time and try to implement those over the next few years. It's a great idea. There are a lot of great ideas in there, and we need to try to implement those. We've got to get our kids at a young age. We've got to get them plugged in. We've got to get them educated, start them down the path of a quality educational system. You know, we had a lot of talk about what's the purpose of education, and to me, it's just one thing, is to educate kids. And every decision we make in the legislature or anywhere else needs to be done with that view in mind. We're doing this for the purpose of educating the kids. Everything we do needs to be done with that view in mind. If you followed the news at all, you know we've been working hard on a charter school bill. This is something that Tate feels strongly about, the governor feels strongly about, and I do too. We're trying to bring together all the different interests who have an interest in this area and hear them and come forward with a piece of legislation that can bring another option in some of the areas where children don't have any other alternative. There are some places in this state that have very good schools. I'm fortunate to live in one of those areas, Clinton, Mississippi. There are 4-star districts in the state, and my district's one of them. I'm proud of that. But there are a lot of areas in the state where children just do not have an opportunity for a quality education. Charter schools is one idea. I'm not saying it's the answer or it's the panacea, but it's certainly one idea that brings in an element of competition, brings in an alternative so that these children can have another way of getting a good education. That is all going to tie into workforce development. I was privileged, as I said earlier, to create what I call a Workforce Development Committee in the House of Representatives, and it's an idea that we're going to use to try to create an educated workforce. A few years ago, I was able to be privy to some statistics, and I don't know that I can quote them exactly correctly here today, but if you go back 50 years ago and you look at the jobs that required a college education, it was 20% of the jobs. 20% of the jobs in the world required a college education. 60% of the jobs were unskilled labor, farm hands, garbage people, legislators. Required no qualifications at all. And the other 20% was your skilled labor, welders, plumbers, electricians, etc. 50 years later, the skilled and unskilled job requirements have reversed. 60% of the jobs now are plumbers, electricians, people who manufacture cars. 20% of the jobs are unskilled. But the amount of jobs that still require college education, still 20%. We've got to embrace those types of ideas and realize not everybody wants to go to college. Not everybody's cut out to go to college. Some people want to be mechanics and welders and plumbers. And let me tell you, I practice law for a living, but I had the plumber to my house the other night. His hourly rate was the same as mine. So there's nothing wrong with being a plumber or an electrician or a welder. They make good money. I saw Mr. McInvale back over there with Ingalls, and they got a lot of welders down there, and he can tell you they make good money. We've created a dual workforce, a dual track educational system where kids in high school can declare that if they want to go do that, let's start putting them in that field. If they want to be a welder, don't make them take calculus and physics and chemistry if they don't want to. If they want to be a welder, let them go be a welder. Let's start educating them so that when they become of working age, they are able to step right into the job market. These are some of the creative ideas that we're trying to push forward and meet the needs that exist in our society. I think Mississippi is perched on the verge of doing something great. I'm excited to be a part of a new day in the legislature. I'm excited to work with Tate, who's been a good friend. He's got some great ideas. I'm excited to work with Phil Bryant, who has also got some great ideas. He brings a passion to the governor's office. He's really excited about it, and I'm excited to be a part of that. I think Mississippi's future is bright. I think we have to take advantage of this opportunity and work hard. We've got a great group of people at the Capitol right now who are working hard to try to push Mississippi forward. I thank you for letting me be here with you today. I look forward to being at the luncheon today. I want to thank MEC for all they're doing to help us and allowing us to come speak with you today. Thank you very much.